There's a lot of protests going on in India right now. Even Greta Thunberg spoke out about it, and now they're burning effigies of her in the street.
They arrested someone who forwarded one of her tweets.
Right. Yeah.
On like how to organize these protests.
Yeah. So it's still going on. They cut off their Wi-Fi, but there's still a bunch of protesters going on in the street. So let's take a look at this video clip where there's actually a protester speaks up on why he's out there. And so this starts off with, "These farmers have slept in the back of this truck for months. They have set up a camp on a busy road near Delhi to protest new laws they fear will destroy their livelihoods." Divilal is among tens of thousands protesting.
इसको ले अगर हम यहाँ से जाएंगे नहीं अब हमारे को 2 महीने क्या हमारे को 2 साल लग जाएं इससे पहले हम जाने वाले नहीं जब तक ये काले कानून रद्द नहीं होंगे
2 years until the laws are approved. So India's government is making new laws to bypass the wholesale market. That they had a price, they had like a price guarantee where they would pay a minimum price for their crops and sell directly to big business. But these farmers feel like that will lead them to be exploited to get the lowest possible price for their goods.
Were the wholesalers at least kept a price minimum?
Mm-hmm. Which was, the wholesaler was the government.
Yeah.
हमारे को एमएसपी रेट इसलिए लागू करवाना चाहते हैं हम अगर ये हमारा फिक्स रेट कर दिया जाए ताकि आगे आने वाली कॉर्पोरेट जगत हमारा शोषण न करे वो अगर ये फिक्स नहीं किया गया तो वो अपने मनमर्जी के रेट लेंगे और पूरा होगा हमारा ना जमीन रहेगी आगे आने वाले टाइम पे ना तो हमारे बच्चे मजदूर हो जाएंगे ना हमारे पास घर रहेगा
So the prime minister offered to suspend the laws, but the farmers said they will continue to protest until the laws are repealed altogether.
Suspension means that they can put it into effect at any time.
Right, so basically what happened was a law was passed that allowed the farmers to be exploited by, I guess, corporations, and the farmers are now protesting because they need those laws to be repealed, otherwise their whole livelihoods are in danger. And so that's why
Isn't that the way Americans give money to our farm, or what is it called?
Yeah, we subsidize our farmers.
Subsidizing.
Yes. So the way they're doing it though is they're leaving too many farmers out while they're doing these huge transitional changes, the government. And so that's why these people, they say, we've been protesting for 2 months, but we're ready to protest for 2 years because we got nothing else to do. So protest means like they're setting up these huge camps in the streets near the city. So let's take a look at more in depth of why India is protesting, or at least the farmers.
About 60% of Indians work in agriculture, meaning that...
Okay, so they say about 60% of Indians work in agriculture. What's the population of India again? It's like 1.3 billion. So 60% of like 1.3 billion is like
800,000?
I mean, is it 800,000? I would think it's... Oh yeah, 800,000. You're right. It's about 800 million.
I mean, yeah, 800 million.
Yeah, 800 million farmers they have. And so these law changes affect a lot of people.
A lot of people have a stake in this dispute. In fact, so dominant are all of these small farmers that 86% of India's farmland is controlled by farmers who own less than 5 acres each.
Wow.
So that's a lot of people involved in farming, and a huge percentage of farms controlled by these small-scale farmers.
So they say 80% of that 800 million farmers...
80%?
Yeah, or like 86% own a farm that's less than 5 acres. I think 5 acres is roughly the size of a football field or a soccer field.
What we have right now
is 5 acres. Yeah. That's why. That's 4.5.
Yeah,
right. And so that's roughly the size of like a football field or a soccer field. And so that's how big 5 acres is. That's what they consider small farmers, which is 86% of 800 million. So that's like 700 million people.
The big regulation change that many of these people are frustrated about is the fact that these new laws will allow farmers to bypass the government-regulated markets for trade and sell directly to private businesses, as well.
So the government regulated market is like the subsidized market, where they'll basically guarantee prices.
And the other one is like selling to a farmer's market or to a restaurant direct.
Yeah, you're just selling to the open market, and then people can pay whatever they want for your crop. So if you're selling a lot of rice, but a lot of people are selling a lot of rice, you're not going to get a good price for that rice. Mm-hmm. But then, the government is giving, everyone a certain price for the rice, then everyone's going to grow that crop. So what it did was it basically, the markets that were already oversupplied were just immediately saturated with this new change. And so the change might be good. It just, the government didn't allow any time for people to adjust.
Adjust to the all of a sudden deregulation.
Yeah.
Not get stomped out.
Right, because farmers actually might be able to make more money in that market because you'll be able to grow different things.
They would be able to adjust to the market so much faster than what they're doing now.
Yeah, you need at least like a few seasons to figure out what the market is, what you can grow,
and to plant and stuff. There's a time, like you can't just change seasons and what you're planting and the protocol of how you're raising your crops at like such a fast turn. It takes a year or two. Well, so why don't I guess then if they're gonna suspend it, then why don't they suspend it and have people come into?
Well, they need to do something. They can't leave all of these like hundreds of millions of farmers out to just fend for themselves.
Yeah, but suspend and then make the steps to.
Yeah, they need to figure out how to do it on the legislation side.
Yeah.
Permitting the stockpiling of crops. This might sound like sensible deregulation, and maybe it is. In fact, many economists back this move, seeing it as a modernizing force for India's agricultural sector. They hope that by doing this, they can attract investors into the space and increase productivity overall. Productivity is an actual issue too, with farming only representing a small fraction of India's total GDP,
15%.
Despite the number of people working in the sector. Even the US seemingly supports these changes, with the State Department reporting that in general, the United States welcomes steps that would improve the efficiency of India's markets and attract greater private sector investment. This is actually a challenge that a lot of developing countries find themselves facing at some point or another. Because when a lot of people work in subsistence farming, there are major inefficiencies, as we've clearly demonstrated. So at some point, governments normally step in and shake things up in order to increase efficiency, profit, and output. This is always painful.
Their full GDP, it's just so small because there's so many other steps from the raw goods to the end product, and all the money being made is after those. Just during the processing of those raw products.
Right. Well, I know. So how do you... Well,
so the services and the marketing and maybe the extraction or the packaging of the rice or whatever the raw materials that they're farming, right? Because we see that lopsidedness in the U.S. too. But the money being made at the end product, the vast majority is after it's gone to a processor from a farmer. Like
right. Well, the government is just trying to figure out how to lose less money, I feel like, doing this for the farmers.
Oh, because the government's the one paying those subsidies.
Yeah, but they just went full corporations that now all of the farmers are like, wait, what about us? Like, we have no one to sell to if you do this all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
This is always painful for the farmers caught in the middle, but from an economic perspective, there's a whole lot of wasted effort and labour being tied up in this kind of farming, which Modi and the government hope can be repurposed once the market becomes more efficient. Even if you agree with this economic argument, the real problem that India's run up against here is the way that Modi's government has attempted to make these changes, without gradual implementation, consultation with farmers, or reassurance from government, meaning that farmers are seriously worried about their future. They're worried that with these regulated markets being bypassed and new investors entering the space, that small businesses and farms will get crushed by big agriculture. They may appreciate that the current system's not totally efficient, but no amount of economic logic is going to convince them that their business being crushed is a sacrifice worth making. They're also concerned that this shift could eventually lead to the government implementing further changes, such as the removal of rules mandating minimum prices for crops, rules which protect many farmers. The government have insisted that they won't change minimum pricing, but given how these 3 laws were pushed through with no consultation, there's not a whole lot of spare trust floating around. And all of these changes are a serious worry for the economic well-being of millions of Indians. In fact, currently more than half of Indian farmers are in debt, and recent years have seen this figure rising. This is such a major issue that some 10 to 20,000 Indian farmers have died of suicide between 2018 and 19, really highlighting the hopelessness that many feel, something they fear is going to get worse. So, facing an already bleak future, farmers didn't take kindly to these new laws, which they saw as further jeopardizing their industry, their businesses, and their livelihood, fearful that their world could be suddenly swallowed up by major multinational corporations. So, in response, farmers started marching to protest these changes. Protesters headed to New Delhi, the country's capital, where police used tear gas and water cannons, as well as blocking roads and shutting down the internet to prevent them from entering the city. So millions of farmers essentially just set up camp surrounding the city. The police's efforts to keep protesters out didn't work forever though, with protesters making it to Red Fort, an iconic location in the city just a couple of weeks back, marking a symbolic win for the protesters before they were pushed back to the camps where they remain to this day.
All right, so what's going on is basically India is trying to modernize, I guess their agriculture, but they're leaving literally 800 million farmers to fend for themselves. And so that's what these protests are these farmers protesting these new laws, and they're setting up these camps outside the cities like Delhi, on the outskirts in protest, and they're ready to stay there for 2 years. And the issue is they feel like these laws are just taking away from their future livelihood, and that's why the suicide rate is just so high for Indian farmers, because they can't see a future anymore. It's just so hard to survive,
And they're going more and more in debt to stay afloat.
yeah. So it's hard to be an Indian farmer, and I hope that there is some relief legislation wise for them. I mean, it seems like they're prepared to go the long haul for this, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens, because there's a lot
Do
of
the corporations think they could just make themselves those products?
well,
Or
I
they're just
think
gonna
the
buy up the land
corporations
and,
feel like because they have the buying power leverage on their side, they
who's
can.
going to do the farming for them?
Well, that's the thing. It's they're not the farmers feel like they're not protected by legislation anymore. That's just another chip away from their leverage of
No, I mean the corporations that are going to it wouldn't be in their interest either to put the farmers out of business.
No, but the farmers feel like they're not going to be able to make enough money, right? I don't know what the farm. You saw the clips as much as I did, so you understand this as much as I do. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing for all of them. I don't know. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're protesting something that shouldn't be protested.
Something.
Yeah.
It's what are the? Okay, yeah.
All right. Well, if you understand this, explain this to us in our comment section. But if not, then go check out our merch store. All right. We'll see you guys. Bye.
Bye.
If you like the video, leave a like and subscribe.